Sensory. I think I've kind of beat this one into the ground. Carries it in. Motor carries it out. Spinal nerves are mixed. They're carrying both sensory and motor. Now, we're going to say that based on these fibers, the sensory and the motor, they can be described as somatic. What does soma mean?
Body.
The body. I always think about the soul. Okay? What does it do? Okay. All right. So, soma, the body. Well, wait a minute. I got this term now. Visceral.
The organ.
The organs. Guess what? That's what my grandchildren say to me all the time. They look at me and they go, guess what? They don't give me time to go, what? You know, they just start telling me. It's going to get a little complicated because of that. Because remember, I said that anything that's exiting, it has to go to the periphery, and we're going to have to deal with our organs also. Okay, so don't forget that. General or special. General can be like all of this stuff out here, but where do we find the special senses? Right up here. All right, so we got to remember that too. The ganglion. An area of dense nerve cell bodies. So, nerve cell bodies. Neuro means nervous, soma means body. So nerve cell bodies outside the central nervous system, because the central nervous system is the spinal cord, and these were just outside of that before you got to the rootlets, remember? They're covered. When we look at a ganglion, we're going to see that there are fibers that lead in and out of the ganglion. So, if I'm looking at the posterior root and information's coming in, now, we're looking at all these nerve cell bodies and leading to the spinal nerve. So it's an area of dense nerve cell bodies. When we talk about the spinal nerves, we have 31 pairs. 8 are in the cervical region. 12 are in the thoracic. 5 for lumbar, 5 for sacral, 1 for coccygeal. So we end up with 31 pairs, meaning exiting on each side of the spinal cord. When we look at that posterior root, that area of nerve cell bodies, that is sensory. So that is an area that sensory information is moving in to the spinal cord. So that ganglion that's going to be present, it's going to have the bodies of that neuron carrying the signal. Is everybody with me on that? Can you explain that again? It's on the posterior side. The posterior side deals with sensory information, because when we have the split that takes place, we get the posterior, the anterior, the rootlets, the spinal cord. The posterior deals with sensory information going in. So you're going to find in that ganglion nerve cell bodies.
Are those nerve cell bodies the receptors, or are they just an additional?
They're going to be another synapse. Yes, because you're going to have some of it that will synapse at that area, some of it won't. Not everything has to synapse in that ganglion. The ventral, the anterior portion, that's the motor, which I think we mentioned earlier. This is sort of what your spinal cord looks like. Have you ever been to the doctor's office and seen the picture that they might have where all of those nerves are coming out and they're showing everything that like this particular nerve might innervate?
Like down
Now, you're thinking of dermatomes, okay? The dermatomes are important. Dermatomes, that was something, now I can't remember exactly when they discovered that, but the reason that it's important is because they have determined that, let's say you go to the doctor and you are like, man, I just don't understand. I'm just hurting really bad right here. And people will usually have their hand on something, okay? Or, man, I don't understand, it's just hurting right here, okay? For example, if they're pointing here, that might let the doctor know it could be a liver problem. Or it could be going to that area of the thoracic region, and they might have a pinched nerve in the thoracic area. It just kind of gives them an idea of what it could be doing. Now, why did I say that it could be something dealing with the liver?
Because the liver is located on the right side.
The liver's located right there, but our organs, our internal organs, the only way they can let us know something is wrong is to make somewhere in our body's skin or area hurt. So the liver might make you hurt right here. Where does the heart make you hurt? Chest, arm, upper tummy. For men. How do you know that women are having a heart attack? It's not the same classic signs for women. What's the signs of a heart attack for a woman? This is why we die more from heart attacks than men. Because doctors tend...
Gastric.
It can sometimes be gastric, and then it'll hurt in our back. And doctors tend to poo-poo it and say, oh, you're fine, you've just pulled a muscle or stretched something. And we're sent home, and we tend to die more from heart attacks than men. Because we don't have the classic sign. We don't have the pain up the neck and down the arm. Yeah, so when you're out there doing your medical field work, okay, lady comes in and hurting really bad in their back, don't poo-poo the heart signs, okay? Make sure you're like, oh, well, let's check this out. So what happens is we get the exit of these spinal nerves, and they're going out, out, out. They're going down the arms, down the legs, around to the front of the body. They're going up and round on the skull, and well, it's going to be cranial nerves. But you get my point, right? Okay, so that's pretty much how that looks for the spinal nerves. But see, here's the thing. Okay, when we look at this system has to do more than just simply make sure that we're picking stuff up out here. It's got to make sure that we're picking stuff up inside. So that anatomy gets a little more difficult, so to speak, and we end up with rami. We'll have an anterior, posterior, anterior ramus, posterior ramus. Rami means like a projection, okay? And then a branch. So that makes the anatomy right there near the spinal cord a little more difficult because of what it's trying to innervate. So, anterior, front, posterior, back, okay? The ramus that we find on the anterior side, when they're located in the thoracic region, it's going to give rise to, now remember where our thoracic region is, okay? Rib cage, all right? It's giving rise to an intercostal nerve. Why is that important?
Because we breathe. That's what lungs between your ribs.
We have got to make sure we can breathe. When you studied the muscles in part 1 and you looked at the intercostal muscles, okay, did you notice how they kind of did this number? Because they've got to go. We got to be able to do that. So, in that thoracic region, the little ramus that you're going to see from that spinal nerve helps to make that happen. In other regions, think about cervical, lumbar, sacral, okay? They're going to help give rise to what's termed a plexus. Any idea what a plexus is? It's a huge grouping of something. So what you're going to find, we're going to have some plexi that are present. And it's a huge grouping of nerves.
Those are the
Like the plexus, okay? Like for example, we've got a lumbar and a cervical. Why do you think we would need an area of grouping of great big huge nerves? If it's up here in my cervical region, what do I need to feed?
Your arms, your limbs.
My upper limbs, and if I've got one down here in my sacral and my lumbar, what have I got to feed? I got to feed the lower. So it's going to be these groupings of great, and these nerves are huge, okay? If you've ever dissected something and you get to something that's really tough to cut through, it's usually a nerve. You don't think of nerves as being that tough, okay? But they are, all right? They're very tough, but we damage them rather easily. On the posterior side, the little part that's going to stick off, okay, innervating muscles and joints in that particular region of the spine, thoracic, lumbar, it's going to be the region of the spine and the skin of the back. It's the reason that on your back, for example, you don't have as much fine touch as you do with your fingers. It's kind of cool, really. The meningeal. What does it make you think about? Meninges. Where do we find those? We're going to find it wrapped around the brain and the spinal cord. So the little branch has to actually re-enter into that vertebral canal and innervate the meninges, the vertebra, and the spinal ligaments. that's what you get at a segment. So, if I'm at a segment where I've got the bone surrounding it, got my spinal cord here,